Welcome to True Echo, where the stories we tell reflect the truth too many try to ignore. Today's story is a raw, emotional journey of power, prejudice, and painful reality. When a young black girl goes out for a jog in her own neighborhood, her life changes in a single moment at the hands of a racist cop. What he didn't know. She's the daughter of one of the most legendary actors alive, Denzel Washington. But this story isn't about fame. It's about what happens when dignity is stolen in broad daylight, and the world refuses to stay silent. Watch closely, because what happens next will shake you. It started like most Saturdays in Bellwood Hills, quiet, clean, almost too still. The kind of place where everyone trimmed their lawns like they were afraid of being judged by the hedges. Imani Rollins, 17, wasn't thinking about any of that. She had just wrapped up her physics tutoring, her brain still buzzing with formulas, and decided to clear her mind before dinner. She zipped up her college track hoodie, the one that read Benedict College Summer Program, a badge of honor for any kid trying to break into the STEM world early. She jogged like she always did. Confident. Measured. She wasn't thinking about being watched. Not until she noticed the parked patrol SUV 2 blocks away. It was subtle at first. Then it wasn't. It was the second time she saw it, creeping up Danbury Lane, that she slowed her pace. Her music played through one earbud, but the other dangled loose, and that's when she heard it. "Hey!" She turned, confused. "You live around here?" the officer barked. "Yeah. Bramble Street." "I'm jogging," Imani replied, breath still steady. "ID?" "I'm just jogging," she said again. "Didn't bring anything." What happened next would be replayed by millions. Officer Brian Kellner, newly transferred from a nearby precinct with a quiet file full of excessive force complaints, stepped toward her like she had no right to be there. Imani hesitated, unsure, raising her hands slowly in confusion. That's when he grabbed her wrist. Yanked. And in seconds, she was on the pavement, her arm twisted unnaturally beneath her. The crack was audible. Her scream sharper. And Kellner? He barked like she was a criminal. "Stop resisting." "I'm not," she cried. "You're hurting me." A few doors down, Linda Albrecht, retired schoolteacher, walked her beagle like always, until she heard the scream. She stepped out and saw a black teenage girl pinned to the ground, her arm visibly fractured. She shouted, "She said she lives here." And started recording. By the time paramedics arrived, the quiet street had erupted into something else: confusion, outrage, disbelief. The video Linda Albrecht captured was already bouncing through neighborhood chats and social media before the stretcher wheels even hit the pavement. Imani's face was pale, pain etched into every inch of her posture. Her left arm was bent in a way that made seasoned EMTs wince. Yet even through the pain, her voice was clear. "He broke it," she whispered. "We're going to take care of you," the paramedic said softly, gently adjusting the makeshift splint. The crowd around her grew. Someone asked, "What did she do?" "She was jogging," Linda snapped, still holding her phone like a shield. "That's it." Officer Kellner stood stiff, arms crossed, not speaking to anyone. One neighbor approached him directly. "She's a kid, man. You really didn't see that?" "She matched a description," Kellner muttered, almost to himself. "Acted suspicious. Didn't comply." That sentence alone, "didn't comply," would be replayed in hundreds of interviews in the days to come. But it wasn't just the phrase. It was how easily he said it. How robotic. As if the words alone absolved him from what everyone could see was abuse. Inside the ambulance, the paramedic finally asked, "What's your name again?" "Imani." "Imani Rollins." He paused, then asked carefully, "Any relation to Quincy Rollins?" She nodded, tears streaming sideways across her cheek. "He's my dad." The paramedic exhaled quietly. That explains why this is going to explode. And explode it did. By the time Imani reached St. Luke's ER, the video was already going viral. It didn't take long before someone recognized her face, not from the incident, but from a family photo posted years ago, her arm wrapped around her famous father at a charity gala, both smiling beneath a banner that read, "Empower Our Youth." Across town, Imani Rollins was already racing toward the hospital, barely able to focus as her phone lit up with texts and calls. Quincy, meanwhile, had already seen the video. He watched it in stunned silence, fingers tightening around the edge of his phone until his knuckles turned white. Inside the ER, Imani lay motionless on the bed, painkillers dulling the agony but not the shame. She stared at the ceiling, mouthing the details over and over. I told him my name. I told him where I lived. I told him I didn't have my ID because I was jogging. And still, she ended up on the ground. When her parents arrived, it was chaos, but not loud chaos. It was the kind that grips your heart in silence. Simone rushed to her daughter's side, brushing sweat-matted curls from Imani's forehead. "What happened?" she asked, voice cracking. "He just grabbed me," Imani whispered. "I didn't do anything." Quincy stood by the door, his face unreadable. He didn't speak for a long time. He just looked at his daughter, then at the bandaged arm, the bruised knees, and finally the attending nurse. "What's the officer's name?" he asked. "Brian Kellner," the nurse replied, without hesitation. A quiet storm brewed behind Quincy's eyes. It wasn't rage, yet. It was the calm before it. The kind of silence that carries centuries of restraint. Soon after, a woman in plain clothes with a badge clipped to her belt entered the room. "Mr. and Mrs. Rollins. I'm Detective Mencken, Internal Affairs. I need to get ahead of this before it gets worse. There's already media interest." Quincy stepped forward. "My daughter isn't a headline." "I know," the detective said gently. "But this will be one. And the way we handle it now will determine whether she's just another story, or a story that changes things." Outside, the hospital was swarmed by press vans and protesters. Inside room 418, a family quietly sat, holding on to what little calm they had left. But the storm was only just beginning. The next morning, headlines exploded. Teen injured by cop during routine jog, victim is daughter of actor Quincy Rollins. Bellwood Hills PD under fire after video shows brutal arrest of innocent teen. Famous actor's daughter assaulted, racial profiling alleged. The family had said nothing publicly. Still, the media filled the silence with speculation, commentary, and debate. The footage was played in slow motion on national news shows, paused right at the moment Imani's arm was twisted at an unnatural angle. Experts weighed in, retired cops, legal analysts, former prosecutors. Most agreed on one thing: what happened wasn't procedure. But inside the hospital, Imani was quiet. Her arm had been set in a hard cast, wrapped tight in white gauze from wrist to elbow. She was stable, but she was changed. Her fingers trembled when she held her phone. Not from the injury. From the messages. Some were kind. Some hateful. Some terrifying. Her classmates sent her voice notes crying and apologizing. She got dozens of DMs from girls her age who had experienced the same thing, but without cameras, without media attention, without anyone listening. Then came the celebrities. An actress from a popular streaming show reposted the video with the caption, "This is why I don't jog alone. Ever." A pro athlete shared Imani's name and wrote, "Protect our girls. All of them." Quincy watched it unfold with clenched fists and a clenched jaw. He hadn't cried. Not yet. But Simone had. Not in front of Imani, but alone, in the hallway outside her daughter's room, her face buried in her hands. That afternoon, their attorney Felice Monroe arrived. She was cool under pressure, well-spoken, with a reputation for suing cities and winning. She came prepared, with documents, timelines, screenshots. You have the power to control the story, or the story will control you, she said. I'm not interested in a brand campaign, Quincy muttered. We just want her to heal. Then let her voice be the one people hear first, Felice replied, not unkindly. Not yours. Not mine. Hers. Imani, lying on the bed, looked up. Can I write it myself? They all paused. Even Felice. You sure? Simone asked. Imani nodded. So later that night, she posted on her Instagram. No hashtags. No filters. Just black text on a white background. I was jogging in my own neighborhood. I wasn't loud. I wasn't rude. I wasn't dangerous. I was just me. And that was enough for someone to break my arm. Not because of who I am. But because of who he thought I was. I'm not speaking because I'm famous. I'm speaking because too many girls like me aren't. In 2 hours, the post had 1 million likes. Meanwhile, Officer Brian Kellner was silent. His department issued a generic statement, the matter is under review. Officer Kellner has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. No apology. No responsibility. No mention of Imani's name. But internet sleuths weren't waiting. Within a day, threads popped up tracking Kellner's prior record, 5 complaints in 7 years. Most closed. All dismissed. But now they were being dragged into daylight. A journalist from Sacramento used public records to pull the complaint logs. One was from a 16-year-old Latino boy accused of loitering outside a convenience store. The boy was tackled, searched, released without charge. Another complaint involved a black woman pulled over for a rolling stop. She was handcuffed and left on the curb for 40 minutes, her child crying in the back seat the entire time. Neither story had made headlines, until now. Back at home, Imani lay on the couch with a heating pad under her arm. Her cast itched, but she barely noticed. She was scrolling through messages from strangers. One girl wrote, I'm 17 too. I quit running after what happened to you. But now I want to start again. Another said, you gave me courage. I thought I was alone. Imani handed the phone to her mother and turned her face toward the couch. I just wanted to run, she said quietly. Now it feels like I can't even breathe without being a symbol. Simone stroked her daughter's hair gently. You didn't ask for this, she whispered. But you didn't run from it either. That matters. Quincy looked on from the hallway, phone buzzing in his hand. CNN wanted an interview. So did Good Morning America. He turned off the ringer. Not yet. His daughter needed space. And so did the world. But the truth? Space wasn't coming. The wave had started. And it was just getting stronger. Within 3 days of Imani's post going viral, the house was no longer just their home, it was a fortress. News vans parked across the street. Protesters, some supportive and some skeptical, stood outside the police department. Messages from strangers poured in by the hundreds per hour. Inside, the Rollins family tried to find normal. Imani watched old episodes of her favorite science show, her cast propped on a pillow. Simone attempted to cook, even though her mind wasn't in it. Quincy barely spoke. He stood at the window most days, watching, waiting. On the 4th day, they agreed to a single interview. They chose local reporter Elise Manning, a woman known for her quiet, human-centered journalism, not spectacle. They met in a small community library down the street, where Imani had once checked out her first physics book. She still remembered the sticker on the cover, for the curious only. Elise's questions were gentle, but honest. Why are you speaking now? Imani took a breath. Because silence might have protected me, she said. But truth might protect someone else. That clip alone would be shared over 10 million times within 24 hours. Not because of the fame. Not because of the lawsuit. But because of the calm strength in her voice. Meanwhile, Bellwood Hills PD was in crisis mode. Chief Randall Odom, a man not used to media pressure, convened an emergency meeting with his senior officers. "We cannot pretend this didn't happen," he said. "We can't afford to." Some officers nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. But it was Officer Anthony Gentry, young and fresh out of the academy, who spoke what everyone else was thinking. "She didn't just get hurt," he said. "She got hurt on camera. And she got heard. That's the difference." But what few of them knew was that deeper scrutiny had already begun. Behind the scenes, a liaison from the Department of Justice had quietly opened a civil rights review, not just of Kellner, but of the department's practices over the past 10 years. That weekend, the family held a closed-door meeting with their attorney Felice. She laid it all out clearly. "We can go two ways," she said. "We can negotiate a quiet settlement. Or we can go public. File a federal civil lawsuit. Risk everything being dragged through court." Quincy looked at Imani. "This is your life. Your call." Imani paused. "If we take a check," she said slowly, "what changes? I want to go public. I want to go to court." Simone reached across the table and held her daughter's good hand. "Then we'll do it together." Days later, the lawsuit was filed in federal court. The complaint read like a map of everything that had gone wrong: unlawful detainment, excessive force, assault causing bodily harm, and violation of constitutional rights. The city responded immediately, with a carefully worded statement that said everything and nothing at once. "We take all community concerns seriously and are reviewing policies. We respect due process. We are committed to transparency. No apology. No responsibility. Not even Imani's name." But then something changed. The body cam footage leaked. It wasn't complete. Kellner hadn't turned it on until he called for medical, but what it did capture was damning. His tone. His aggression. The moment he muttered under his breath, "Every damn time, they act like they're the victim." That clip, just 8 seconds long, exploded across the internet. It wasn't a debate anymore. It was proof. The mayor, a man who had tried to stay neutral, finally held a press conference. "What happened to Imani Rollins should never have happened," he said. "And if we don't change the system that allowed it, we are complicit." He promised new oversight boards. Community-led complaint reviews. Mandatory racial bias training. For some, it was too little too late. But for others, it was a start. At school, Imani returned with her sling still wrapped tight. She walked into the building like nothing had changed, but everything had. Some kids clapped. Others hugged her. A few stood back, unsure what to say. She didn't need them to say anything. She just needed to walk through the door without flinching. Simone waited in the car, watching from the lot. Quincy sat beside her, sipping lukewarm coffee. "She shouldn't have to be this brave," Simone whispered. "No," Quincy said. "But she is." That night, the family sat together in the living room. The news played softly in the background. Another round of debates. More coverage. A quote from one of the protest signs flashed across the screen. "Let her run." Imani looked down at her healing arm. She knew the pain would fade eventually. But the memory wouldn't. Still, she also knew something else: she wasn't alone anymore. She had sparked something. And it was still burning. 3 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, the temperature outside Bellwood Hills Police Headquarters climbed into the 90s. But that didn't stop the crowd. Nearly 400 people gathered on the front lawn, holding signs, some wearing T-shirts with Imani's name across the chest in gold lettering. Others held simple cardboard placards that read, Let her run. Justice for Imani. Broken arms, broken trust. Across the street stood a smaller group, louder, angrier, and far more hostile. Their signs read: Obey the law. Stop playing the victim. We back the blue. The contrast was painful, but predictable. Inside the Rollins home, the blinds were drawn. Imani sat on the couch, her arms still bandaged beneath the cotton sling. Her phone buzzed every few seconds. Reporters. Classmates. Strangers. She turned it face down. I didn't ask for this, she muttered, staring at the blank TV screen. No one's saying you did, Simone replied gently, sitting beside her. Quincy paced near the hallway, his face set in stone. He hadn't spoken much that day. Not since the city's legal team had sent them a settlement offer, 6 figures, confidentiality clause, no admission of wrongdoing. He pushed the paper away the moment Felice handed it to him. This isn't a paycheck, he said. It's our daughter's body they're trying to buy. Felice nodded. They're hoping to end it quietly before it reaches a jury. Imani's voice was quiet, but firm. Then let's go to trial. A week later, they did something bold. Imani agreed to give a speech, at Fresno State, where a student-run criminal justice forum had invited her. It wasn't a huge event. Just 60 folding chairs in a lecture hall. No TV cameras. No publicists. But for Imani, it was everything. She stood at the podium, arms still in a sling, her voice steady. I didn't come here to be a symbol. I came because too many people only care when the victim is famous. What about the girls whose names you don't know? Who don't have a camera or a celebrity parent to protect them? If justice only listens when a headline screams, then it's not justice. I want to live in a world where being seen doesn't require being broken first. The room was silent. A few students had tears in their eyes. A professor in the front row nodded slowly, then stood and began to clap. The rest followed. Imani didn't smile. She didn't need to. The moment wasn't about applause. It was about truth. Back home, the family's legal team prepared for war. The court date was set. Jury selection began. Depositions were filed. And with it, a series of internal documents leaked from within the Bellwood Hills PD, emails, complaint reviews, personnel files. They painted a disturbing picture. Kellner's previous excessive force cases never fully investigated. Complaints routinely dismissed without contacting witnesses. Training on racial bias listed as optional in officer reviews. Simone slammed the folder shut one evening in disbelief. They knew who he was. They just didn't care. Quincy looked out the window, the streetlight casting shadows across his face. Until now. Then came the next explosion. A second body cam video surfaced, one from another officer who had arrived late on the scene that day. He'd kept his camera running, even after Kellner stepped away from Imani. In it, Kellner could be heard muttering again. She's lucky I didn't do worse. Next time, they'll learn to shut up and comply. The video was damning. It shattered the misunderstanding narrative the defense had clung to. Kellner wasn't calm. He wasn't confused. He was cruel. When the video aired, national coverage surged again. Late-night hosts discussed it. Civil rights leaders spoke out. Even celebrities who had remained silent began weighing in. The conversation had shifted. It wasn't about Imani's arm anymore. It was about what kind of country allows a cop like Kellner to move from one department to another unchecked, over and over again, until he broke a teenage girl's bones in broad daylight. At home, Imani scrolled past the noise. Past the headlines. Past the think pieces. Then she stopped on one comment, from a girl in Detroit. You make me want to speak up, too. Imani smiled faintly. It wasn't victory. It wasn't closure. But it was proof she hadn't been silenced. Outside, summer leaves rustled in the warm wind. Somewhere, a siren wailed. But for a moment, in that living room, the world was quiet. And Imani? She wasn't just healing. She was preparing to be heard, again. Courtroom 2B was packed the morning the trial began. Every seat taken. Every aisle watched. The Rollins family sat together at the plaintiff's table, calm but alert. Imani wore a navy blue blazer over a white blouse, her sling removed but her scar still visible, faint but undeniable. She didn't try to hide it. Kellner sat across the aisle, flanked by his attorneys. He wore the same cold expression he had the day he forced Imani to the pavement. He didn't look at her. Not once. Felice Monroe stood to give her opening statement. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This case is not about celebrity. This is about a 17-year-old girl, an honors student, a track athlete, who was assaulted while jogging in her own neighborhood. This is about the kind of peace every American child should have. The peace to walk, run, and exist, without fear. The courtroom was still. Then came the defense. Their lead attorney spoke crisply, confidently. Officer Kellner acted within the scope of his duty. There was a community alert about a suspicious individual. Miss Rollins matched the description. Her refusal to produce identification triggered a safety protocol. There was no malice. Just enforcement. The lie was slick. But the room didn't buy it. The prosecution called their first witness, Linda Albrecht, the retired teacher who filmed the original video. She sat upright, hands folded, voice firm. I heard the girl say she lived there. I heard her say her name. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't resisting. He just took her down. Like she didn't matter. Next came the EMT. Then the internal affairs detective. Then a former Norwood PD officer who had worked alongside Kellner, and quit because of him. We called him Trigger Brian. He never de-escalated. Always escalated. He didn't care what the truth was. He only saw threats. Especially if they didn't look like him. When Imani took the stand, the room held its breath. She sat tall. Her voice was steady. Not because she wasn't nervous, she was, but because she had repeated her truth so many times, it had become armor. I told him my name. I told him where I lived. I raised my hands like he asked. And he still grabbed me like I was lying. Like existing wasn't enough. And that hurt worse than the break. The silence after her words was loud. Kellner's attorney tried to trip her up on cross-examination, pushing on small inconsistencies. Were you sure you heard him ask for your ID? Yes. Did you ever raise your voice? No. Isn't it true you looked afraid, suspicious? Imani looked straight at him. I looked afraid, because I was afraid. Not because I was guilty. The jury took notes. The court artist drew her with shoulders squared and eyes locked forward. After court adjourned for the day, Imani and her parents walked quietly through the courthouse lobby. A small crowd had gathered outside. One child, no older than 9, stood holding a drawing. Imani leaned down. Is that for me? The girl nodded. My grandma said you're why we speak up. The drawing was simple. A girl running under a golden sun. Below it, the words. She runs for all of us. Imani blinked back tears. Thank you. Back home that night, the weight of it all settled in. Simone sat at the kitchen table, flipping through old photo albums. I used to be afraid of the world seeing her, she whispered. Now I just want the world to see her fully. Quincy placed a hand over hers. They do. Because of her strength. Imani walked in moments later, hair pulled back, hoodie loose. She sat with them, not as a symbol. Not as a victim. Just as their daughter. But what none of them knew was that the jury's deliberation, when it came, would be faster than expected. And the verdict would carry more weight than anyone had imagined. The jury deliberated for just under 4 hours. When they returned to the courtroom, the room fell into a hush. The judge asked for the verdict. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stood and read aloud. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Imani Rollins. We award compensatory damages in the amount of $3 million. And punitive damages in the amount of $10 million. A sharp breath cut through the courtroom. Kellner's jaw twitched. He remained motionless, staring straight ahead. Quincy closed his eyes. Simone let out a shaky exhale, and tears finally broke free. Imani didn't smile. She simply nodded, once, firmly, like someone claiming what was rightfully hers. After the judge dismissed the court, reporters surged outside, waiting for a statement. But the Rollins family didn't stop to speak. They went home. This wasn't about media cycles anymore. This was about breathing room. Over the next 48 hours, headlines screamed. Imani Rollins wins $13 million verdict against Bellwood Hills PD. Teen assaulted by cop brings national reckoning to suburban policing. Let Her Run movement gains nationwide momentum. But the real story wasn't about the money. It was about what came after. The Bellwood Hills police chief, under pressure, announced his resignation. A state oversight committee launched an audit of officer complaint handling. Governor Larrabee publicly endorsed legislation to mandate full transparency in all interdepartmental transfers involving police misconduct. They called it the Rollins Reform Package. Within a month, 4 departments statewide adopted the policies before the bill even passed. Back at home, Imani sat on her bed holding the drawing from the little girl outside the courthouse. She runs for all of us. She taped it next to her mirror. Some mornings, her arm still ached. A phantom reminder of what was taken. But as summer gave way to fall, she began running again, first just down the block, then around the neighborhood. No earbuds. No hoodie. Just the sound of her breath and the feel of the pavement. One afternoon, Quincy walked out to the porch as she came jogging up the driveway. "You feel okay?" he asked. She grinned. "Yeah. I needed that." Then added, "You know, I think I'll run track again." Quincy smiled. "Not because of what happened." "No," she said. "In spite of it." A few weeks later, she returned to the Fresno State campus, this time not to speak, but to enroll. Her major, criminal justice with a minor in computer science. When asked why, she told the admissions counselor. "Because I want to build systems that protect people like me. Sometimes, justice doesn't come in a single moment, it comes in the quiet after, in the choice to keep going." Imani Rollins didn't just fight for her own dignity, she helped expose a broken system and gave voice to hundreds of others who never got the chance. As Reverend Bledsoe once said, "Your silence might protect you, but your truth might save someone else." If this story moved you, share it, comment below, and subscribe to True Echo. Because the truth deserves to be heard, and remembered.